Dear Bick, you're probably not going to believe this, but...
Good morning, Mr. Seal.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Who do you think you are?
Beans is the name. One of the Boston beans.
Mr. Hardy.
Quiet! Camera! Action!
No rattler could rip her, no python could nip her, for she was a lad learning class. Sweet Frosty Farmer, the lovely snake charmer, who fell for a snake in the grass.
She shunned all the geezers on flying trapezers and let all the acrobats pass. The sweet Flossie Farmer, the lovely snake charmer,
Went boom for a snake in the grass.
Is the name, one of the Boston beans.
What is about to happen is not for the squeamish. The Baron Frankenstein is ready to infuse life into his creation. But one of the infuses has blown, and no refreshment is reaching the monster. So the Baron goes to his refrigerator, where he keeps the cans of Heineken, like any other normal citizen. And Frankenstein administers the cold Heinekenstein. And quickly, the monster is refreshed and ready to take his place in society. Heineken is the only beer able to do this, because it refreshes the parts other beers cannot reach.
Good evening, goblins and ghouls, and welcome to this very special episode of the Scream Stream. I am your host, Spakenstein, joined as always by my very good friends, Mr. Evan Sink.
Good evening.
And Mr. Fresh Rogan.
What up, Benny? Fuck you, Benny.
And yes, I see Benny is joining us for the first time tonight. Welcome, Benny. You've been enlivening up the chat with Sylarn and Fresh. A little bit of spirited conversation. And that's the right kind of spirit, because I was just telling these guys right before we hopped on, tonight's a celebration. It's why we're having this very special episode. Guys, it's Frankenstein Day. So first off, happy Frankenstein Day, everybody.
Oh, great.
That is why.
So what makes it Frankenstein Day?
So, great question, Evan. The first great fact of many to come tonight. Today, August 30th, is Mary Shelley's birthday. And if you don't know who Mary Shelley is, she wrote the original novel that Frankenstein is based off of. What
was the novel called?
Funny thing, it was just called Victor. And later on, once Universal got involved, they said
name was originally Jeremy.
Jeremy. Jeremy's monster. That's what it originally was. That just didn't have a ring to it. Frankenstein sounded better. If you've ever wanted to know, actually, we're going to answer all these questions are going to be answered tonight, because tonight's special, I am dubbing it, is a symposium. And Fresh asked me before we hopped on here, he said, "What the fuck is a symposium?" And it's kind of funny the way that I came upon this. It was when I figured out there was a Frankenstein Day. I figured out it was coming up. Said I needed to do a special. Symposium, for some reason, was the first word that came in my head, and I was like, all right, I need to look this up. I need to figure out what it's about. Well, so the modern definition is a conference. It's a discussion about a particular subject, right? But it comes out of ancient Greece and ancient Greek traditions of, part of a banquet. After your feast, you go and you have lively conversation. You have a drink. They were drinking wine. I'm going to be drinking some different beers tonight, starting with an ice cold Heineken, i.e. that fun little commercial that we saw. I don't have a Stein, unfortunately. I just have a mug. But Franken mug doesn't sound good either, so
Look at that Franken mug.
Well, actually, I kind of have a Franken mug. It's kind of more like a coffee mug, and I haven't drank out of it. It's really nasty inside.
What I hate is that you can tell it's made out of pre-existing mugs.
Right. You just slap a handle on it and you do some things. And I'm going to be busting out. I've got tons of Frankenstein memorabilia over here on the side. I'm a huge Frankenstein nerd. That's the other thing. I'm going to, got to be upfront with it. Huge.
It's a big Frankenhead.
Huge Frankenhead. Big time.
This big Frankenhead.
Big time Frankenhead over here.
You and your Frankenhead. Get out of here.
I have been since the first time I saw the first movie, or the first Universal movie. In college, I wrote papers about the Universal Frankenstein movies and presented at a conference about Frankenstein. So I definitely consider myself an amateur scholar. I'm not going to say I'm a professional scholar by any means, but I certainly have done my research, done my reading, and I'm going to share it with you guys tonight because, again, everybody knows Frankenstein's monster, Frankenstein, whatever you want to call it. Everybody knows what that is, right? Unless
what is it?
Yeah. Unless you're Fresh Rogan, you've been living under a rock for, I'm not going to reveal Fresh's age, going to keep his anonymity intact tonight. But however many years sleeping under a rock, then
I'm in the 18 to 35 demographic.
Right. Then and there might be some people that have, but I think, with Halloween, with, that time of year, the widespread ubiquity of the imagery of Frankenstein's monster, Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, the mad scientist, the imagery is everywhere. Everybody's seen it. Everybody's kind of familiar with it. And no, Benny, that's what this show is all about. We're basically, it's basically Halloween year round on this show. I love Halloween.
Shut up, Benny.
No, I love Halloween, and we're gearing up for it. That's the season 3 is all careening toward Halloween. That's when we're gonna end season 3. So I'm super excited for it over here. I can tell you that.
Just a caveat to his statement is cracking me up. That's all.
Yes. I wasn't gonna acknowledge it, but
yeah, we're good. We're good. I get it.
But no, it's one of those things. Everybody knows Frankenstein's monster, Frankenstein, but it's kind of like a weird journey how it got from the novel to stage to screen to just kind of a ubiquitous, well-known figure in pop culture. So we're gonna watch a bunch of stuff tonight. We are going.
Yeah, we're watching Frankenthumb tonight.
Oh my god! I wish I could have
If
gotten.
only.
I wish the super license, believe it or not, did not cover Frankenthumb. Unfortunately, we cannot.
Yeah, that costs extra.
It's
an
does.
add-on.
It is an add-on. We will not be able to cover it tonight. Unfortunately, Frankenthumb is great. I grew up on Frankenthumb as well, but it's one of those things that, Frankenstein is, it kind of had a weird journey to get to what we know it as now. There's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of different things in the mythos that got established at different times, that it's changed. It's a living thing. It's a living, breathing thing. And
are you saying that it's alive?
It is alive. It really is. It is. It has changed since Mary Shelley. Again, she was. This is the anniversary of her birth. She was actually born 225 years ago today. So, yeah. So,
and she doesn't look a day over 100.
Doesn't look. That corpse is just, just as robust and holding shape.
After they decompose, the aging process kind of comes to a halt.
Mm-hmm. Now she looks great. Looks half her age. But yeah, so Mary Shelley, she was the author of this book, and she could never have foreseen how it would end up. So we're going to kind of cover all that. We'll be watching the 1910 short film adaptation of Frankenstein, which was produced by Edison Studios. Yes, that Edison, Thomas Edison. He was in movies for a good bit of time and was kind of trying to monopolize the whole system.
He's trying to take over movies.
He was.
He's like, here's a video of me killing an elephant. Isn't that crazy?
Right. And that is public domain. We could have showed that. Again, this is a public domain show. All the stuff we'll be showing tonight, most of it is public domain. All the Universal Studios Frankenstein trailers I'm going to show are public domain, but some of the ones from another studio called Hammer Films, I don't know if all of those are public domain, but there's a fair
sounds fake.
But there's a fair use argument to be made, because I'm going to be talking over we're going to be talking over the whole thing. I'm going to be sharing facts. So it's an educational transformation.
Really going to throw that algorithm off.
Really,
wait, Benny, are you serious? You didn't know about public domain until now?
Oh yeah, Benny. Benny, this is the first time you've tuned in. Yeah, the public domain is it's basically stuff that for whatever reason the copyright was either never filed or it didn't get renewed, and so now it's just free to use. So almost everything,
or it's just really old,
which the Edison thing that we're watching tonight, that's the case with that, and the other ones, most of the trailers were never copyrighted. Movie trailers just weren't copyrighted, so a lot of early ones are public domain. So, but yeah, public domain's cool. That's why nobody else is really focused on public domain. So that's what the main show is about. And again, tonight is kind of looking at Frankenstein's monster through a public domain lens. So we're gonna be getting into the transformation. So, yes. So I think we can go ahead and kind of get into real quick talk about the novel before we get into the Edison film. For those of you who don't know, the novel was originally published in 1818. Mary Shelley, when she first conceived it, the novel, she was 18 years old. And she had the first ideas for it in 1816. Her and her lover, it wasn't her husband, which was kind of scandalous at the time, and their friends, they were staying at this villa in Switzerland, Villa Diodati, and it was called The Year Without a Summer, because apparently some crazy volcano erupted, and so there was just clouds and ash and rain for months. No sunshine at all.
Perfect vacation.
Vacation. So they were inside this villa, stuck inside this villa. So they decided, let's tell each other ghost stories. Let's see who can come up with, let's have a competition who can come up with the best ghost story. So,
hey, it looks like the world's ending outside.
Right.
Do you guys want to tell some ghost
Let's
stories?
tell some ghost stories. So that's what they did. Yeah. And
Dude, imagine telling like this little small ghost story, and Mary Shelley breaks out a novel for like 3 hours.
I mean, essentially, that's kind of what it was like. It's almost like it was just like this little, supposed to be this fun little thing, and it sparked this whole novel. And
Mary, aren't you done yet? I don't care about Victor. This has gone on for hours.
It's alive.
Well,
and then he got up from the table, and then
well, and that's the thing. So Mary Shelley, like it all, she said it all, and she kind of told some embellished stories about it. But she said that she had a nightmare after they decided they were going to have this ghost story competition. They went to bed. She said she had a nightmare, and she basically saw Dr. Frankenstein standing over the body of the monster, and that was, that was the spark. And so she told her husband Percy about it, and Percy said, yeah, you got to write that, you got to make a novel. So Percy kind of did. And so over 2 years she wrote this novel, and Percy was her editor. And there was kind of no, fresh, they did. There was this book called Phantasmagoria, which was this book of ghost stories. And they were reading this book of ghost stories. They were taking drugs. They were having sex. They were very like, I don't know if libertine is the right word, but they were very like.
So it's 1816. They're 18 years old. They're having their midlife crisis.
Well, Percy had already been married and Percy had already had a family, left his family behind to be with Mary, who's 18 years old at this point. And so they're with their friend Lord Byron. I don't know if you guys know the poet Lord Byron, but he was.
Oh yeah, we go way back.
He was trying to come up with a ghost story. He tried to come up with a vampire thing. It didn't really pan out. But then this other guy who was with him, Polidori.
All I could think of was poems.
Yeah, pretty much. So this other guy, John Polidori, this doctor, he wrote this story called The Vampire, which was like it came before Dracula, and it was kind of the first romantic vampire story. And so that was another thing that came out of that weekend, was not only did Frankenstein, but so did this whole vampire gothic romantic genre.
Wait, he was Roman?
Oh my god, why I are
not completely, but it was just romantic.
He was romantish.
So yeah. I mean, so she had read these ghost stories. She'd probably been taking some drugs. They were also talking about galvanism, which was a popular concept at the time, which was basically that through electrical impulses you could stimulate the body. You could that's the spark, that somehow there's an electrical life spark, and through the use of electricity you can revive things. It's not.
So probably right about that time, somebody figured out that you can like put an electrode on a frog leg and it twitches.
That was what was going on at the time. They were doing that. They were also taking like executed convicts, and they were pumping them full of electricity, and they're like,
great, as you do.
Their eyes are opening, and yeah, there's all these med students sitting around like, indeed.
Like, are you seeing this shit?
Pumping them full of electricity again, you mean?
Right, yeah. Right. Refilling them, giving them a little top up. So, say, hey, bud, I think all your electricity spilled out.
If you don't shock them every few months, they don't stay dead.
Right. I mean, it's pseudoscience for sure. I mean, come on, it didn't pan out, obviously. But that was something they were talking about at the time. She also was influenced by Paradise Lost, which was like a famous novel. She was the story of Prometheus, like the myth of Prometheus was something that she was influenced by, which is why the subtitle of the novel is The Modern Prometheus. And I don't remember quite what the myth of Prometheus is about, but it's a whole...
He was the one who stole fire from the gods and gave it to people.
So essentially,
I thought it was the alien on Adult Swim.
Right? Yeah.
Oh,
I thought you were gonna say like Alien, the prequel to Alien, because the movie Prometheus is a prequel to Alien. But unrelated, turns out. But no, so she had all these influences going in, and also, you know, if you were wondering where the name Frankenstein came from, while they were traveling around Europe, the year before, they were a few miles away from a castle Frankenstein, which had been the home of an alchemist, like centuries before. It had been the home of an alchemist.
Evan already made the joke, or I would make it again.
Wait, what did you say?
The alchemist makes some pretty fire beats.
Right, yeah. Love that producer. He's got a great castle.
Yeah, the alchemist and Action Bronson lived in the same castle with him up on the hill.
Right.
Now that's a sitcom I want to see.
When are we going to make beats? And he just has this big cauldron in a lab.
That's
right. He's got some like aged cheese and some like a whole turkey or something.
That's what Mary Shelley should have written.
You know, it's crazy to think that if they had just gone a different way and gone by a different castle, it would have been like Dusseldorf's monster or something.
It could have been something that was, very like clunky or just not as, I don't know. There's just something about the name Frankenstein that's very...
it rolls off the tongue.
It's intense. I don't know what it is. And so she... she had all these influences that came together, but it took her 2 years to write it. And she had a bunch of personal tragedies that went on during this time. Her sister committed suicide. She had multiple children that died. Like, she had all these personal tragedies, but she finally got it published in 1818, and it was published anonymously at first. And so there ended up being questions later on about who was the author. There were questions about, did her husband, Percy, have anything? He had a very small percentage. He kind of edited as she went along, and there was a small percentage of changes that he made, but nothing, most of it, pretty much all of it was Mary Shelley. She, so there's no question of authorship. But in the 70s, there were some scholars that were trying to pick fights with feminists, and it was a whole thing. And so just quashing that right off the bat.
They were featured on it.
Right. Yes. No, featured. So it ended up being a huge success. It sold out within a couple months. Like the first edition sold out completely. And so it was popular, but Percy died 4 years after the novel was released, and he died. His yacht sank in a storm, and he died. And the reason I mention that is because after his death, she became much more, I guess conservative probably isn't the right word, but she became
obsessed with alchemy and
well, if only she got more, her morals got more scrupulous and more, she was just trying to but just the opposite. She got a little bit more reserved and a little, kind of differed as she grew older and had all these tragedies. She changed, and so as a result, she wrote another edition, or did a revised edition that was released in 1831, and it puts more morals in the story and more like stuff
in
about
that one. Frankenstein repents and then he goes to heaven, and it's all good.
More stuff about God and destiny and all, fate, and just these things that it wasn't her original intention, but that was what she revised. And unfortunately, that became the popular version that was taught in schools and really came to be kind of widely printed, was her revised edition, which isn't quite as again, the original text is, it's just much more it's more interpretive. It gives you more to think. It's not trying to force a moral upon you. But that was an original criticism that she got when it was first released, was that it didn't have morals, that if there were morals, they were bad. It wasn't the critics were really cruel to her, especially when they found out who the author was and that it was a woman. She got, it wasn't easy for her. But she ended up, she ended up dying. I don't remember when she died. Not too long. I think it was like 1840s, 1850s. But in her lifetime, literally 5 years after the book was published, is when the first stage plays started popping up. So now we're shifting to the stage, okay? So now we're getting the visual component that's going to start to come in. We're gonna hop into the Edison thing, because basically this Edison short we're about to watch kind of reflects a lot of the stage traditions. But the first play started coming out 5 years after the novel was published, and Mary Shelley actually went to Edison does suck. I'm not a Thomas Edison defender by any means. Don't get me wrong, Fresh. And so I mean, Mary Shelley actually went to the most popular play, which was called Presumption, or The Fate of Frankenstein. And she said she was much amused. That was her review. She was much amused by the whole thing. And she really did seem to enjoy it. And there are actually a lot of traditions from this play, Presumption, that ended up carrying over into the movies, especially the first movie. This whole idea of Frankenstein having like a hunchback assistant, specifically the name Fritz. That's in this play. That's also in the first 1931 movie. It's kind of got a similar, both things have a similar structure. The actor playing the monster plays the character as a mute. That was one thing in the novel. The monster's very eloquent. He's learned speech. He is very he bears his feelings out often. But in this play, apparently in the stage traditions of the time, mute characters were popular because they, it was all about expressions without words, which again kind of segues off the Lon Chaney stuff we were talking about last week with pantomime. But it was very much like that was what actors playing Frankenstein kind of did on the stage and in movies afterwards, was copy this original stage play, which was the monster's basically mute. He's doing all these emotive things, but he's not really speaking. The line, "It's alive," they didn't quite use that in the play, but it was close. They said, "It lives." So that's like, because that's not in the novel. The creation scene in the novel is nothing like the plays or the movies. It's very low key.
It's pretty glossed over.
It's really glossed over. It just kind of,
I did some weird science, and I found an alchemy book at med school, and bada bing, bada boom. Yeah. Here's a monster.
There's no mention of electricity. There's no mention of any kind of real galvanism stuff. It's just, he stitches it together and, it's alive. It opens its eyes. It's awake. And he just says, "I figured out the spark of life. I figured out the life spark." And that's never really explained. So all these traditions came out of this first play, Presumption, and they carried over for basically centuries. Like the Frankenstein monster as we know him today, still these traditions kind of hold true for everybody's perception of the monster. And it comes out of this play from 1823. So again, it's kind of crazy the way you can start tracking these things. And it was basically this play that there was an adaptation in 1927, which ended up being bought by Universal and led to the Universal movies. But before all that, the first adaptation you had was Edison's. So we're going to watch the Edison film right now, if you boys have it queued up.
Not watching that shit.
Fresh is protesting.
Boycotting
Edison.
Edison's he's getting canceled.
I don't blame you, Fresh.
How many elephants did he kill to make this fucking movie, dude?
So if you look very closely in the background of these, in the window sets, you can see like a bunch of smoke.
Dwarves hung themselves in the background.
Right,
yes.
Exactly.
It's like a fun Easter egg. You put it in all of your movies.
It is. It really is. Super fun Easter egg. But yeah, I mean, so this was actually the first screen adaptation. It's from 1910. Edison was just, his studio produced it. He didn't direct it or write it. He didn't really have a direct hand in it. His company just released it. But it is, again, it trades off some of these traditions from the stage play. And Frankenstein, again, by this point, 1910, it was coming up on 100 years since the novel had first been published, and it had already become kind of a pop culture icon in England, certainly, in politics, in society. It popped up in a lot of political cartoons for sure. So it was like it was already this well-known thing, which I think is why they adapted it for the Edison company. So I think if you boys have it queued up.
Yes, sir.
Then without further ado, the Edison adaptation of Frankenstein. And it is a very liberal adaptation, I will tell you. It's
all these Democrat movies.
He's going to college. He's gonna kind of get indoctrinated.
Going to college, bitches. So this was shot in 3 days in the Bronx, which was kind of like where Hollywood, like the center of film production originally was in the Bronx. It was in New York. And then it transitioned to California. Yeah, right?
I mean, California's like nothing at this point, right?
Pretty much. And then that's why they went out there, because I think it was kind of getting saturated. And so again, this is, very static, very, you're not going to see a lot of camera movement. You're not going to see any camera movement here.
This looks like I paid a nickel and I'm staring into a machine and cranking a handle.
That's essentially, this is the Edison kinetograph, like, that's essentially what you're doing. You're looking in one of those big machines, and there's a whole booklet of information that you can read, which goes along with it, which is just it's basically telling you what. It's kind of hard.
It's looking pretty red in here.
Just look weird in here, and just get some new light bulbs in here. Come on, Edison, what are we doing?
The light bulb thing. It uses electricity and stuff. My sweet thrit.
Sweet thrit.
My sweet thrit.
This film was actually believed lost for the longest time. And then in the 70s, it was discovered that there was a guy had a private copy, and eventually, it ended up in the public domain.
I love reading about lost media. It's really
I mean, this guy just found it. It was like he bought it from his mother-in-law. It was like sitting just with a stack of other films, and he didn't realize for the longest time what it was or that it was important. And then he's like, "Oh, maybe I should tell some people about this."
I've been using this film roll as a coaster.
Yeah, pretty much. A lot of lost films have ended up that way. You just don't realize the importance.
I've been using it as a doorstop. I didn't realize it was important.
I thought it was an empty canister. I never even opened it, honestly.
Uh-oh.
So it definitely comes out of the plays, the idea of making a spectacle out of the creation scene. And that's kind of, part of the structure is that early on you're going to have this big creation scene, and then you're going to end with some grand finale, which that's not super grand here. In the stage plays, they would be in the Arctic, which is kind of how the novel is, or I think there's one where they ended up in a volcano, all this crazy shit. The structure of the novel itself is crazy. They jump around to so many different places. It's so much globe-trotting. It's so hard to follow. So all these movies that we're gonna watch are very contained as far as location. They do not.
I thought they were in the Bronx, not Harlem.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Yes. What's the team
Look at that
out of
arm
the Bronx?
going.
What team is out of the Bronx?
I don't think there is one.
Well, I know. I was just about to make up a name that was probably really bad.
Whatever
so I
the
decided
Bronx
not to
high
say
school
it.
basketball team is called.
We're the Bronx Beaters. We're gonna beat you down.
Yeah, this is very liberal. I see what you mean.
That's they don't even know the significance of that gesture. Ah.
Okay. A little bit of development.
It's like a sea monkey. It just develops super quick before you turn
Look
around.
how hairy his chest is. He looks like a Sasquatch.
Now, of course, this is the moment where he realizes, oh shit, what did I do? I thought this was gonna be great. Like, creature's horrifying. Which never made, it's in the novel, and it never made sense to me why Frankenstein, he's all jazzed about doing this, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, what did
He's
I,
like,
it happens. He's like,
oh
what did I
no,
do?
it's ugly.
No,
Pretty
that
much.
makes sense, right? Like I think the reality probably hits him. Kind of like when people like go to war and they're pumped, and then they like kill somebody, and then they're not pumped anymore.
Then they're not pumped for the rest of their life.
Everything's just downer from then on out. They're chronically unpumped.
That's the clinical term.
The clinical term is chronically unpumped.
This is not.
I can't see you entering from the side. I have no peripheral vision.
Yeah, this is the Metal Gear Solid rendition of Frankenstein.
Of course, you're not going to see any close-ups in this kind of a thing. It's all long shots.
I think that adds to the aesthetic of it looking so cheap.
Just
These
everything.
static, wide shots of everything.
Everybody's doing their own. It's all, but in a way, it's almost like composition. It's almost like a wide painting in a way. But we've become so accustomed to, I need close-ups, I need action, I need all these things, you know.
This feels like a Wes Anderson movie.
This is where he got his start.
Right. Well,
The
and there
Anderson
is
nickel machine.
certainly some influence from like George Méliès, which is the guy who did, you know, some of the earliest silent films out of France that were really like A Trip to the Moon, which is the one where the moon gets the rocket ship in its head. His films were very, very kind of influential to what Edison and a lot of these filmmakers in America were doing in the early 1900s, before Hollywood really started out in Hollywood. You know, in the 19...
Before it existed.
Basically right around this time, because Edison was trying to hold a monopoly over everything. He was trying to monopolize the whole film industry, and luckily he didn't get away with it. And
I'm the only one who's allowed to make movies. You all have to come see my movies.
that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to patent the equipment. And he said everybody else's equipment's ripping off my equipment. It's mine. So, because I filed the patent, so nobody else
like
should be able to
Edison.
do it. Yeah, and luckily people like Carl Laemmle, who produced the Frankenstein movies that we'll see the trailers for tonight from Universal. He was the founder of Universal. He fought Edison. He was part of a group of people that rose up against Edison and said, "Nah, we're making movies. Fuck you, dude."
I mean, Edison eventually lost all those stupid fights that he picked.
He did. He definitely did. And one thing,
He looks like a troll guy.
I was gonna say, one thing you can kind of see here is with the look of the monster, you know, look at the forehead. Look at kind of the size
That's
and
true.
shape,
Yeah.
right?
He's got a big head.
Big, almost square headpiece. So you're almost seeing some precedent in the makeup. which I think even on stage there was that kind of precedent, because in the novel her description is long black hair, yellow eyes, yellow skin, watery eyes, yellow skin.
I think red means nighttime.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Of course.
Thanks for the tint interpretation tonight, Fresh.
Red for night and blue for day.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Red means stop, blue means day.
Oh my god. So, and this is a thing that carries over from the novel to the stage adaptations, to the screen adaptations, is this idea of Dr. Frankenstein's wedding. He's about to get married, and inevitably the monster is going to crash the party. And
I have a question.
yes.
Where is his stethoscope?
Well, so it's actually, back in those days, they tied their stethoscopes around their waist. What the hell? Why go to blue when the monster shows up instead of red?
Understand. I'm starting to think the film just got fucked up.
Or the tinting guy was just drunk. He misread all the notes, had them all mixed up.
Dr. Frankenstein also doesn't have the reflective thing on his forehead that
just
no
wait.
real doctor actually has.
One of our Dr. Frankensteins tonight, I believe we will see him with one of those on. I think we will.
He has one on. He's like scalpel.
Yeah, he does. He does say that. I think he asked for a stethoscope.
Imagine you're her, bro. You're like, what the fuck just happened?
Pretty much. Elizabeth is her name in all these adaptations, and she is always surprised. So we're about to get kind of a twist here. Let's see if you
Yeah, where's this going? It's coming up on the end.
Let's see.
And then Dr. Frankenstein wakes up and it was all a dream.
What?
Oh, he's invisible now, right?
Only exists in the mirror realm.
You have to no clip into the mirror to get to him.
Yeah. So basically.
So the monster becomes enlightened and then ascends to the next dimension.
To the next, the new realm.
Yeah.
So basically, what the Edison company's intention there was that, that the monster was not really real and more represented the immoral desires that Dr. Frankenstein had, that he wanted to push with his science, and that only through the love of his family and committing himself to his fiancée could he really push out those monstrous thoughts and be a pure person. And so it's all psychological, basically. There's not really a monster. And
they're all up in your membrane on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's so their intention was to de-emphasize the horror, and it's not about this scientist who's digging up bodies and stitching together some kind of living being. It's that it's all in his mind.
I love
science is the real monster.
Yeah, serious. Yeah, essentially, and that's kind of what it started in the stage plays. What they were like, okay, well, we have to give it a moral. Which was I guess kind of stipulated in plays back in the days. There's got to be some kind of moral lesson or purpose to this. And so
otherwise, what are we doing?
Right. So the whole thing that they put in was that okay, well, it's about, it's about being good and pure and not transgressing against God and staying in your lane. And, science is bad, basically. All these things that was not Mary Shelley's original intention when she wrote the novel, but it started with the plays and then even with her own revision in 1831, where people started putting those kind of morals on it. She didn't really fight it very hard. And we'll see that it carries over into the films, which we're about to see the trailers for. But that was the Edison version. What's verdict, boys? What do you think? Should we dig up Edison and yell at him for butchering Mary Shelley's novel?
No, he did other bad things that kind of shadow this one.
You don't think this was the worst thing? What? Yeah, not him killing an elephant?
This was definitely the worst.
This was the worst thing Edison ever did.
Wait, so did you guys catch the dead elephant in this one? I missed it.
Run it back. Yeah,
Garrett. So if you look back, you guys missed it. If you look back past those windows when he's in there with his family, just in the background, you can see the smoldering smoke cloud rising, and this dot. It looks very black, charred, and that's the elephant. So you guys missed it. So you'll have to watch it again later.
I missed the elephant in the room.
Missed the elephant. It was right there in the room, and you missed it. Go figure. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that they were trying to take a different approach with it, a psychological approach. But at the end of the day, this is all about horror, baby. Like, we want to see some gruesome stuff. That's, and that's the thing. This is really before horror movies are actually a thing. So the trailers that we're gonna see are basically, the start of the horror genre kind of as we know it, and the first big franchise. So super excited to get into that. Anything before we go to break, boys? Start of the horror genre. That's right.
Start of the horror genre.
That's correct. The horror genre.
The horror. The horror genre.
All right. Well, we're going to go into the break, and then when we come back, we're going to get into the trailers for Universal's Frankenstein film. So stick around. We will be right back.
Hell yeah.
When the stitches are out, he'll pass for a normal, quite attractive teenager.
His face.
I want him to know and feel pain. What I create, I must control. Go on, activate this body.
With Basil, demonic as Professor Frankenstein, who creates out of human parts the most terrifying creature to walk the earth today.
I should destroy you as dangerous evidence.
The one, the only, king of monsters, brings you the demon of the atomic age. Boris Karloff as Frankenstein, 1970, carrying on the hideous experiments of his infamous ancestor.
In this stone sarcophagus, deep in the bowels of the earth, he buried his creature, his creation.
Frankenstein, 1970. In the hell pit of his centuries-old castle, he perverts the terrifying wonders of nuclear science
Get you some eyes.
To unleash a horror beyond all imagination.
What kind of dealings do you have with the director of the morgue? Are you interested in corpses?
Even the cyclotron concealed in his subterranean vaults cannot complete his foul creation, for which he must have throbbing vital organs transplanted from living beings.
Two people are missing, and I want to know why they haven't come back.
Mr. Rowe, I imagine, would have us suspect foul play.
Boris Karloff as Frankenstein, 1970.
And we are back. So that, and I didn't realize I didn't introduce those trailers before we went into them, but those were the trailers for I Was a Teenage Frankenstein and Frankenstein 1970. And so, yeah, I'm showing some lesser known trailers during those breaks. You know, kind of weird Frankenstein movies. But we're going to get into the Universal series of Frankenstein films right now. Universal Studios made eight. Hold on. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys my VHS collection here. I got them all. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8. Okay. So I got 8 of them here. It's again, this is one of the first really popular series of films in the way that we see movie series now, like the Marvel movies, things like that. And hey, Sweet Feet's in the house. Hey, Sweet Feet. Yes, I'm pulling out all kinds of little memorabilia I have. So I had to pull out the VHS tapes. So they did 8 films between 1931 and 1949, and they, I love them all. They vary in quality, but I love them all. I think they're great. And they are really kind of what established all the tropes of Frankenstein's monster as we know them today. And we didn't cover this yet, but I just want to say real quick before we go on, I don't care if you want to call Frankenstein's monster Frankenstein or there's no credit. We've talked about it on the show before, and I don't really care. It's whatever anybody wants to call it. I've never been picky about it. And yes, Sweet Feet does have the sweetest feet in the Southeast. Can confirm that is a fact. Yeah, Sweet Feet, we have been going over Frankenstein, and we are about to get into some really fun movie trailers. So the first one that we're going to see is for the original Frankenstein from 1931. We're going to see 2 trailers for that, because the second one is a trailer that I hadn't seen until recently, and it's actually an earlier trailer from a re-release in the 30s. The first trailer we're going to see is from a re-release in the 50s. So there's actually some different things in the 30s trailer that are kind of interesting. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about all these movies and have fun with it. I love these movies. So if you boys have it queued up.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, then here we go. All right, of course, this first trailer, Frankenstein 1931. Directed by James Whale. He does have a
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
In 1930s.
Right, in the 1930s, it's kind of...
So he told one person.
When this dead hand moves...
He told the guy he was sleeping with.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, but no, I mean, so James Whale was he was a very queer, like, had very queer sensibilities, and it reflects more so in the next trailer that we're going to see, but he was the one that picked Karloff. He saw Karloff and this Boris Karloff, who played the monster in the studio commissary, and thought he had a really distinct look, and that was how Karloff got hired. And
he said, "Hey Karloff, you're an ugly motherfucker. You'd be a good monster."
Well, Karloff he'd been around Hollywood for 10 years playing character parts, and yeah, it was basically he said Karloff had a unique face. And then the makeup artist Jack P. Pierce really designed the makeup, and Jack Pierce.
But did he say it like that, or did he say, "Ooh, you have a unique face"?
I think he said he had unique facial features, and you know, Karloff. I mean, his performance is what makes it, but the makeup is wild. And Jack Pierce did all this studying. He studied anatomy, surgery, medicine, criminology, electrodynamics. He said to do the makeup, and that's the makeup.
And alchemy, wouldn't you know it?
Right, but the makeup is what everybody remembers. It's the image that goes with Frankenstein to this day, but Universal does have copyright to the makeup. This is the re-release trailer, and we're going to see clips in this trailer that aren't actually in the actual movie. They're like alternate takes that I've never seen them before. This is an alternate take. This is an alternate take. These are not in the actual movie.
Oh, false advertising.
You don't get a shot that cool of the monster in the movie, but that was a great shot of the monster walking by. You don't get that. But the movie was a smash hit. All the lab stuff, the lab equipment, that was established in this movie. A guy named Kenneth Strickfaden made all these equipment, all this crazy equipment, and it got used in all these movies. And you know, Karloff just kills it.
Was this the first non-silent?
Yes. There were two other silent movies, Life Without Soul and Monster of Frankenstein. They're both lost. And then, yeah, this was the first sound, Frankenstein, and then this is the sequel.
Less of a talkie, more of a grunty.
Yes, but now, here, they're going to say it at the end of the trailer, but here in this movie, the monster talks. And that was, Karloff did not agree with that, but Karloff returns as the monster. He did not like that the monster talked. James Whale also returns as the director, and this one's more of a black comedy. James Whale put a lot of black comedy in it, and it's actually a really fun movie. Some people say it's better than the original. They dramatized the whole ghost story thing that Mary Shelley did in the beginning of the film, and she's played by the same woman who plays the bride in the film, Elsa Lanchester. And you know, the Bride of Frankenstein's only on the screen for a couple minutes, and she's an iconic character. Like, everybody remembers the Bride of Frankenstein, but she's only in this one movie, and she's only in it for like less than 10 minutes, and so it's kind of interesting.
Wow, look at all those Tesla coils right there.
That's
yeah, fuck you, Edison. Fuck you.
That's Kenneth Strickfaden's work, and he was a student of Tesla, actually. He was. That's right. Kenneth Strickfaden was a student of Tesla.
He can't be a student of Edison. He doesn't know anything.
And even if he did, he wouldn't tell you anyway.
Now, those other trailers that we've seen are those are re-release trailers. This is the original trailer that was released during the time of the movie, and there aren't many of these that survive. A lot of the trailers that we're going to see tonight are re-release trailers.
After 20 years, the son of Frankenstein
and Universal stopped making horror movies for a while, and then in 1939, they decided, after a popular re-release of Frankenstein and Dracula, to make this film. And it's fun. Bela Lugosi is in the mix, playing Igor. This is the first time Igor pops up. Igor was not a character in the novel or any of the plays. He's original to this film, unique to this film.
Frankenstein presents the most fearsome cast in the history of the screen. Basil Rathbone, in his heart, warm human
Basil
emotions.
Rathbone played Sherlock Holmes. Look,
Oh,
there it
he's
is.
got the
Yeah, I
thing.
told
He's
you.
got
And
it.
a stethoscope. He's got them both.
In his human emotions.
Human
The
music.
performances in this movie are over the top, and the set design is amazing. It's German expressionist, like it's wild. The story's okay. Karloff's performance isn't. He's getting old, you can tell. But Lugosi's great here as Igor.
They hanged me once. Lionel Atwill. Grim hatred in his blood.
Lionel Atwill is great.
Easily forget.
Does the monster talk in this one?
Nope, does not talk again.
Josephine Hutchinson.
And well, it does not talk in this
Give you a
film.
magnet to the menace around her.
I hate it here, Wolf. I'm terribly afraid all the time.
Sometimes, Benny, sometimes. Sometimes they're dubbing it in. Not ADRing it in. That's what they call it.
I'll stay by your side until you
Yeah, you wouldn't know about the lingo, Benny, but it's called ADR.
But yeah, I mean, this movie was really popular and kicked off a whole new cycle of the films. But like after Bride of Frankenstein, the original owners of the studio lost control. These new guys, bankers, took it over, and it took them a while. But then they made this film, and it kicked off a whole new cycle. So it's a great film. I love Son of Frankenstein. It's a new Universal picture. That was the new ownership. This is the next film, 1942's Ghost of Frankenstein.
Was that actor's name Atwill?
Yes, Lionel Atwill. He's in a lot.
He can just quit his job whenever he wants.
He's in a lot of horror movies from the 30s and 40s, and he's great. He's kind of like some of these other guys that we've seen on the show. And this is a great. I love this movie too. But it's more of a B movie.
So
what were you gonna say?
Is this a direct sequel?
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah, it picks right up with, or it picks up a couple years after the last one.
So I assume they kill him in the previous one.
He is thrown into a sulfur pit, or kicked into a sulfur pit, and so in that one,
everybody knows if you get kicked into a sulfur pit, you come back as a ghost.
Igor was shot and dead in the last movie, but he's back to life in the beginning of this. Finds the monster, digs him out of the sulfur. When the villagers are trying to blow up the castle, they come and they find Frankenstein's other son. And they try to get him to give Frankenstein's monster a new brain. And this is the first time that plot device was used, of giving the monster a new brain. And it's, he ends up with Igor's brain, which ends up, it creates some more continuity stuff in the next movie. But, and Lon Chaney
So
Jr.
he's not
is
actually
playing
a
the
ghost
monster.
in this one.
No, but he had died in the last one, and now he's kind of miraculously revived.
You expect a protection of my office, you'll have to be frank with me. I think the time's come for a showdown now.
And yeah, this is from the beginning of the movie right here when they blow up the castle. But it's yeah, I mean, it's the first time that they do a whole brain transplant situation, and the doctor wants to put in the brain of his friend who the monster killed, but then Igor wants his brain in the monster so he can be powerful and not have a broken neck, and unfortunately to disastrous results. And this is 1943's Frankenstein meets the Wolfman.
Great.
This started as a joke. The screenwriter was just making a joke, and the studio said, yeah, make that. Put Frankenstein and the Wolfman together. And needless to say, the results are kind of less of the story, the screenplay are less than stellar. But this is the first time that the only time Lugosi would play the monster. And Lugosi kind of got shafted. And, and he had played Igor for 2 Frankenstein movies. Igor's brain was now in the monster. So they said it makes sense for Lugosi to play Igor, or to play the monster. Well, Universal cut all this dialogue that Lugosi had as the monster, explaining how he was Igor and he, was blind and couldn't see. Universal cut all that for whatever reason. So people thought Lugosi had this terrible performance because he's walking around like he's blind, but you don't know that he's blind because it's never been explained, because they cut everything that explains it. So it's kind of a mess of a movie, but it's fun. You know, the two monsters are battling it out. It's, you know.
Isn't this the one with the big flood? Like they flood the castle or something?
Yeah, big flood instead of a fire, and it's a fun movie. I really enjoy that one. That's when the series started becoming more for kids. And it became all.
Yeah, when are we gonna get Frankenstein in space?
This is I had a trailer I could have put in tonight that is Frankenstein meets the space monster, but I didn't put it in. But this is a monster mash kind of movie where they're putting all these monsters in one film. And
the Hunchback.
Yeah, this is where that was considered a monster back then. Unfortunately, not very But Boris Karloff makes his return to the series not as the monster, but as a mad scientist. And the role of the monster is taken over by a guy named Glenn Strange, who would play the monster for the next 3 movies. He played the werewolf in The Mad Monster, which we watched in season 2. I don't know if you boys remembered.
I didn't know what you were doing.
But I did. Jason X meets Frankenstein.
I mean, essentially, Sweet Feed. It's like where if they kept making Frankenstein movies, that's where it would be. I'm surprised they haven't. Glenn Strange said that Boris Karloff trained him for the role of the monster. I don't know if that's true. That's what he said. But he does an okay job. But the monster kind of becomes more of a background role in this movie and the subsequent movies. Because the monster is like infirm for most of the movies. He's more of a prop, like in these last films. Even though the movie's called House of Frankenstein. Yes, Spina Bifida. Yeah, it's.
I think he's got scoliosis, dude.
That's a sad situation. So this is, Dracula's a little more involved in this one, but the monster is just in the background the whole time. It's really...
The Mad Doctor.
Yeah, another Mad Doctor. Well, the Hunchback is not a bad... It's this nurse who's a good woman. Like, I don't know why she's listed in the trailer.
She about to do a magic trick.
She's demonized. I don't know why. But it's an interesting movie in its own right. I do enjoy House of Dracula. It's mostly about the Wolfman, Larry Talbot, Lon Chaney Jr. The monster is just kind of laying around until the finale. Here. Pretty much that.
Dude, I love the hip shot pistol in all of these fucking movies.
Yeah, nobody used to aim.
And they just reused footage from some of the earlier Frankenstein movies, which is really sad too. It's just kind of... You can tell how tired it was getting. They weren't putting the money in it. And this was the last serious one. This was 1945, kind of the end of the series, really. Because the next trailer is not really part of the series, but I have to show it. 1948's Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. I mean, the monster is just a prop for Costello, I mean, we get more brain transplant things, it's, again, where a lot of people's stereotypes of the Frankenstein monster come from this movie. He's walking around with his arms out, he does talk. He says, yes, master. That's it.
The dangerous and terrifying Wolfman.
And the guy who go ahead, Evan.
So by this point, Frankenstein's pretty much just a cartoon.
Pretty much a cartoon. The big draw here is Bela Lugosi playing Dracula for the first time since Dracula in 1931, which really was the reason Frankenstein got made, was because Dracula was so popular. It was also a Universal Studios movie. But he didn't get to play Dracula until this movie, and it's kind of sad because it's a parody, it's a comedy, and he doesn't, the rest of the movie gets really shine. The makeup is by a completely different makeup artist. They got rid of Jack Pierce, who had done the makeup since the first movie. And they brought in a guy named Bud West. Yeah, he does. He's just a beast. So those were the trailers.
Frankenstein's
for all.
on first.
Yes, I mean that's where it got to, and those were the trailers for all of the Universal horror Frankenstein films. Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, can't argue with that. But no, I mean, so the series got tired, and by 1948 they were done making those movies, and but you know, Universal, kind of like a lot of studios now, realize that there's value in a back catalog, and so they had these movies, they licensed them to be re-released, and they were re-released throughout the late 40s and the early 50s, and then eventually they got packaged and put on television in 1957, and this set off a monster craze across the United States. There were TV hosts, kind of like what we do, that show old monster movies, and they had all these Universal Frankenstein films, so you suddenly
when did Monster Mash come out?
Around this time, 1958. It was a craze. Like I'm telling you, there were magazines, Famous Monsters of Filmland. There were toys, like there were Frankenstein Pez dispensers, toothpaste. So 62. That was kind of like toward the end of the craze. Like Munsters came out in like 62 or 63, and that was kind of the decline, was in the toward the mid 60s, but the start of the craze was in 57. And so you had model kits from this company called Aurora. There was all the synergy, and so that's what kind of really cemented Frankenstein in pop culture in America. Frankenstein's monster was really this monster craze in the late 50s, early 60s. And it was, these Universal movies just never went out of vogue. Like the first home video 8mm movies were cut versions of Universal Frankenstein films. And that started in 59. So, I mean, really early on, Universal started realizing the value of a series and a back catalog and a library. And so they just, ever since then, would re-release these things to new popularity. And so an enterprising British company named Hammer Films, they took advantage of that, and they decided that they would make their own Frankenstein movies. And they also made a series of either 8 or 9 movies. So we're going to see the trailers for those. We're going to go to a quick break, and then when we get back, we're going to watch the trailers for the Hammer Frankenstein films. Right now, during the break, you're going to see the trailer for Dracula versus Frankenstein and Black Frankenstein, which is a blaxploitation version of Frankenstein, which is it looks fun. It looks really hilarious. I felt like I had to include that trailer. I felt like you guys would get a kick out of it. So we're gonna.
Has anyone done Franken Slime yet?
No. We always hit on some good idea. Nobody's done yet.
Wait, don't give away our idea for.
So, yeah, keep it quiet.
Yeah,
keep it quiet.
TM. Yeah. Someone copyright that quick. Get the web domain.
Yeah,
you said TM, so that does it. Now it's official. We're covered. So. No, I don't think anybody has, so we'll do that. We're going to get cracking on that. So enjoy the trailers for Dracula versus Frankenstein and Black Frankenstein, and then when we come back, we're going to get into the exciting trailers for the Hammer Frankenstein movies. So we'll be right back.
They live by night. They hide in the dark and rise from the shadows. They can never feel the warmth of living human blood in their veins. Their bodies are cold and dead. Dracula versus Frankenstein.
who serves the dead. A dead man who controls the doctor and a living creature horribly created from the mangled corpses of their victims. Dracula versus Frankenstein. His blood is cold, but his mind is keen. He cannot die, for he is already dead. His name is Dracula. Another lives, but his body belongs to the dead. The two will join forces, but only one will survive. Dracula versus Frankenstein. Oakmoor Cemetery is a cold, lifeless place to visit at night. Unless you're already dead, and your name is Dracula. Together, in one film, they meet in a fight of fright. The kings of horror battle to the death. Dracula versus Frankenstein.
Dr. Stein would like to see you in his laboratory.
What brings you to California?
Well, I just arrived from New York. My fiancé was wounded in Vietnam, and the doctors there wrote and told me he was being transferred to the Veterans Hospital here. He was seriously wounded when a landmine went off under him. Eddie, this is Dr. Stein. The doctor I studied with when I was in school.
Now, tell me once again, Eddie, what do you feel?
That was my middle finger.
That's correct.
Dr. Stein, look at this.
So no, you don't need to go see it. That was you saw 3 minutes of it. You don't need to see Black Frankenstein. You saw it. Yes, I mean you saw it, the whole movie, and except the boobies, you did not see those. Sorry, Benny. Sorry, Fresh. I hope your petition goes well. I look forward to receiving it.
Yeah.
Until
I'm
then,
starting it right now, Garrett.
Perfect. Yeah. So those are fun trailers, and again, this is when you know around the 70s when Frankenstein has kind of descended into parody. Frankenstein's monster has descended into parody as a character by this point, as a trope, to kind of be used for whatever anybody wants to use it for, and it's it's not really taken very seriously. But one of the companies that really exhausted that, put in a good way, was Hammer Films out of England, and they were around since the 30s. And in 1957, they made Curse of Frankenstein. So we're going to start with that trailer, and we're going to see the other trailers that they did. I know Evan may have to dip out at a certain point, so just let me know, Evan, and we will bid you a hearty adieu. But until then, we're gonna keep it rolling. If you boys have it queued up.
I do.
Yep.
All right, then we are going to watch the trailer for Curse of Frankenstein first, and the other Hammer Studio Frankenstein movies right now.
More than 100 years ago, in a mountain village in Switzerland, lived a man whose strange experiments with the dead have since become a legend.
So all the other Universal movies were black and white. This is the first Frankenstein movie in color, and it's got blood, and it's got gore, and it's got sex, and it brought all of that to Frankenstein films for the first time. So
what year was this?
This is 1957. So when I say sex, it's not really. It's just like women in
risque for 57.
Women in nightgowns with their cleavage showing, a lot of cleavage. That's really it. Lingerie, nothing. The Hammer gets more explicit the longer this series goes on, but initially it's pretty restrained. But that was Hammer's reputation with they made Frankenstein movies, Dracula movies, just like Universal. But they would partner with different studios. They would produce them. Movies would be distributed by other studios. This one was distributed by Warner Brothers. So they couldn't use the original Frankenstein makeup. They had to design a makeup that was distinct so Universal wouldn't sue them for copyright. Everybody was worried about getting sued by Universal.
A demon had made a
So when they copyrighted the monster's makeup, did they have to paint it on an egg? Like clowns do?
Yes, they have to paint it on an egg and then submit it to the office. And it's got to stay intact. But I mean, it's kind of not clear what exactly Universal has copyright to. It seems like the electrodes and maybe some of the scars or the other things, the flat head. The monster here doesn't have a flat head. His skin is green. His dress is similar. His hair is kind of similar, but he doesn't have a flat head.
We copyrighted a flat head.
They pretty much did.
Disney tried to copyright the fucking 3 circles. So, if you have enough money, you can copyright anything because you can just fight anybody who wants to try to impose on it.
So this is Revenge of Frankenstein from 1959. Peter Cushing returns as the Baron. It's got the same director as this was from the last movie. That was the last movie, Curse of Frankenstein. Director of both movies, Terrence Fisher. Star of both movies, Peter Cushing. And that's the difference between the Universal movies and the Hammer movies, is this follows the Baron. These movies follow Baron Frankenstein, whereas the Universal movies followed the monster. So it's kind of a different focus. And it's all centered around Peter Cushing, who plays the Baron in all of these movies except one. He kind of plays him differently.
Eunice.
Eunice, how many Eunices do you know?
My favorite actress, Eunice.
This is one of those movies where the doctor masquerades as a kindly doctor, but he's really conducting these experiments and doing all this grisly stuff in color. And,
so this would pave the way for, or I get what was first, Phantom Creeps or this?
Phantom Creeps. Phantom Creeps was the 39. This was 59. So this was 20 years later. And this movie was distributed by Columbia Pictures, still produced by Hammer. And in this one, the creature becomes like a cannibal, basically. Like that's the kind of difference, is that for whatever reason, Frankenstein's monster starts to crave flesh. Which is kind of a weird differentiation that they have.
For no reason.
Yeah, it's a little bit. And in the last movie, the monster is played by Christopher Lee. I didn't mention that. But Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing both in Star Wars movies. So there's a big Star Wars connection to this series of films.
You are interrupting my work.
Now this is 1963's Evil of Frankenstein. Peter Cushing's back as the Baron.
The evil.
This one they actually made with Universal, so they were able to use a similar makeup style. They were able to use similar plot lines from the Universal movies.
The evil of a man.
They find the monster trapped in ice, which is kind of a pull from Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. This creation scene is out of a Universal Frankenstein movie. The makeup isn't very good, but they ran short on time, and that's what they came up with. But they went with the flat head and the bolts and,
Just had to carve something out of foam at the last second.
Wait, we gotta shoot tomorrow, dude.
You're right, Benny. It is a mask. It really looks like
it looks like the mask.
It does look like this had a different director than the last two movies, Freddie Francis, who went on to be an Oscar-winning cinematographer for the movie Glory, but he directed these cheesy B-horror movies out of Britain in the 60s and 70s. And this movie retcons the previous two movies. Like, the previous two movies shared continuity. This movie has its own continuity.
His head looks low poly.
Yeah, it's...
The front is like flat.
Right. And that was their interpretation of the Universal makeup and the flat head. It just looks so... the actor has no expression. He's not able to express under such heavy makeup. Yeah.
It's like Michael Myers.
It really, yeah.
So this...
It looks like it's made of paper mache.
It does. It looks really cheap. So this is a 1967 film called Frankenstein Created Woman. And I love this movie. It's different. Terrence Fisher's back as director. And it's like a reverse kind of plot line. A woman who is scarred commits suicide, and Frankenstein turns her into a beautiful woman. He resurrects her as a beautiful woman. But what this movie also does differently is they talk about the soul. And Dr. Frankenstein transfers a soul into this new body. But it's a vengeful soul, and it causes the new body to seek vengeance. So it's a wild movie. kind of like a fairy tale. But Dr. Frankenstein is kind of a softer character. He's a little more ruthless in the past films. Here he's Peter Cushing plays a little different. It's kind of nice. It's sad.
A couple of Ruths in this one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would 100% agree with that assessment.
A few Ruths at least.
But I mean, it's a fun movie. And it gets kind of like a slasher, pretty much.
Kill him, Christina.
But all this stuff with the soul is crazy. Yeah, there's some good match cuts. And Martin Scorsese put it on like a list as one of his like favorite horror movies. He put it on some list of movies.
Yeah, the top 10 worst movies ever made.
There's just something about it. I got it when I was little, and the cover art is a little deceptive because the female monster's in basically like a bikini, and you're like, whoa, is this like a really sexual movie? And it's really not. She never appears in that. The
costume. Mad Hatter is in here though.
Yes, it's very. Some of the costuming is very elaborate. It's a fun movie.
He said, "How is a raven like a writing desk in the man?"
It's definitely different. So, this trailer is 1969's Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, and it is a entirely different film. It is ruthless, it is violent, there's a rape scene which nobody wanted to film, but the producers made them do it, and but it's the same team, Cushing, Terrence Fisher, same director as the last movie, but they just go in a whole different direction. Baron Frankenstein has never been more sadistic. It's the same distributor, Warner Brothers 7 Arts. They did the last movie as well. It's kind of more.
Are these meant to be a series, or did they just make a bunch of non-related Frankenstein movies with the same people?
The continuity is really loose. It's all centered around Baron Frankenstein's character. It's all centered around Peter Cushing.
That's weird. They did that with movies a lot back in the day, where they're like loosely related with this one actor who's playing this role.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first 2 movies have continuity, and every movie after that does its own thing. And the only continuity is that his hands are fucked up, like in some early experiment. His hands are. But the monster in this movie is different. He's more eloquent. He speaks. He's because he has the brain of a scientist.
And that's why he must be destroyed.
Well, yeah, and so his creation made sure to try to do that job. It's a wild film. I was really excited to see it and buy it, and I bought it, and then I got to the rape scene, and I was like, you know, like I was like really excited to like. It's like, oh man, this is. Even as it must have been when I was 10 or 11. I was like, oh shit, I was not expecting this. It kind of puts a damper on the whole proceedings, but it's really dramatic. There's a lot of action. But all these movies are just kind of different in tone and different in how Peter Cushing plays the character of the Baron. It's yeah, it's great.
Burn one down.
And yeah, the makeup is pretty modest there too, as you can see. It's just kind of like stitches around his bald head, and you know, that had been done before.
He's just like a guy.
Well, he talks just like a guy. So they tried to just completely reboot the series in 1970 with this film, Horror of Frankenstein. They bring in a new guy to play the Baron, Ralph Bates, and the monster is played by a guy named David Prowse, who you guys wouldn't know his name or wouldn't realize it, but he's the physical actor for Darth Vader in the original Star Wars movies.
Oh yeah, I can see the resemblance.
Yeah, can you see the way that he struts around? If he just had a cape and a helmet on, you can see it.
Yeah, I think Peter Cushing was R2-D2.
Well, no, so Peter Cushing was Grand Moff Tarkin in the first film. Christopher Lee was Count Dooku in the later trilogy, and
a young Frankenstein.
Yeah, David Prowse was the body of Darth Vader, while James Earl Jones was the voice. But David Prowse played Frankenstein's monster here.
I didn't know they did ADR for the. I knew they had dubbed it in, but I thought it was the same guy. That's interesting. For Darth Vader's voice.
No, James Earl Jones. There's a great Star Wars bit where
they do a Family Guy joke about
where
that.
James Earl Jones is like in the costume, but they make it. It's a fat joke basically, so it's not very.
Oh, I see.
It's not very appropriate. But it is what it is.
I'm gonna look it up. I looked at the Edison bit already.
But this film is more of a black comedy. I actually haven't watched it all the way through. I should watch it again, but it just, I prefer Peter Cushing. This is just a kind of a different thing altogether.
The welfare state, that's what it is.
But it's, the writer-director's a different guy. He had written some of the past Hammer horror films, and
to terrorize the
yeah, Sweet Feet. I don't know, yeah, Tummy. You can use the word Tummy. I don't know if that's politically correct, I like the word Tummy.
Hammer, the masters of society.
Okay, yeah, I remember the bit now. I just looked it up. I recall. We just want you to do the voice. He's hanging out of the helmet too, bro. His chin's hanging out of the helmet.
Alright, and so this is the last film, and
whoa!
This is 1974's Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. And
okay, this one's really Quentin Tarantino.
I bought this movie on DVD at a young age. It is wild. Dr. Frankenstein works in an insane asylum, and it is just like brutal. It's kind of like the earlier movie that they did, Revenge of Frankenstein, in a way that, you know, he's masquerading as a kindly kind of guy, but he's really just doing his same old bullshit.
He's back on his bullshit.
Yeah, Peter Cushing is literally back on his bullshit because he wasn't in the last movie, so he is back on his bullshit.
In the OG one, was he not masquerading as like a regular dude?
Not in the first movie, he's just Baron Frankenstein. In the second movie, all the other movies after that, if he's out in public, he's masquerading as somebody else. Although I think in Frankenstein Created One, he's just... This movie is wild, but it didn't do well at the box office, and it was their last Frankenstein film. It was the last film that director Terrence Fisher did. Peter Cushing kind of got out of horror movies, started doing less and less. His wife had died. He was depressed.
I love the couple of Frankensteins we've seen that are just Sasquatches.
Yeah, and this is also David Prowse, the same guy from the last movie, the guy who played Darth Vader physically. But yeah, he's in basically an ape suit. I don't know, ape core? Question mark?
Is this ape core?
I don't know. He's not quite, but it's, you know, it kind of tries to codify all these tropes, and it's a wild movie, but I do really enjoy it. I think it's fun, but it didn't do well. The series was over after this. But it's bloody, it's brutal, it's violent, it's everything you can want from a Frankenstein movie. Yeah. The monster is fucked. Without a doubt. Why they put the tinting on that particular part of the trailer. Yeah, it's kind of a sad end, but you know, after 8 films, what else can you do? Again, we've seen all the trailers for the two main Frankenstein series of films that have been made up to this point, like, more than 3 movies, and you can see that by the end they're kind of sputtering to figure out where to take it next, and that's kind of.
I mean, it's a lot of movies. You can only do it so many times.
By 7 or 8, it's kind of like you've seen it with Freddie, you've seen it with Jason, you've seen it with all of them. It's kind of like, where can you take this franchise after you have killed them and brought them back and killed them and brought them back? But it really started with the Universal movies, and then the Hammer movies kind of picked up, on this monster craze and continued the popularity through almost to the mid 70s. And, basically after that, Frankenstein's monster became kind of almost a prop, a pun in pop culture that could be used in advertising, be used in different things. But these original movies, I think, still stand up in their ability to impress, like, from a visual standpoint, from an acting standpoint. Are they scary? Some of these Hammer movies kind of legitimately in some parts are, and I love the Universal movies. I wouldn't say they're necessarily not scary, but it really.
Do you think it would be possible to make a modern Frankenstein movie and be taken seriously?
Yeah, I think 100%.
You could do it.
I think you could. I want to. I've had a plan in mind of what I would do, how I would do it, and it's
okay.
It's the thing is that what a lot of people miss is that they don't go back to the original text. It's all about going back to the novel. And even
I feel like I'm in church right now.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to be like
this is here in
the church of
Leviticus
Mary
13.
Shelley and Frankenstein here. But no, I mean, it is one of those things that I've read. I've read the book many times. I got a copy of the book. My sister got me this. Like, it came out. This is, I think, from 1931. Whenever they released the first movie, they released these. I think it's her abridged or her revised copy, but it's got like these pictures in it, and it's it's one of those things that I'm a Frankenstein head without a doubt. And so that's why I've been really happy to share all this with you guys tonight, because it is kind of wild when a thing has been around for over 200 years, the way that it changes and the way that it is represented in pop culture and kind of where it stands in pop culture. And so I'm very happy to share a little bit of knowledge with you guys tonight. I hope I didn't bore you guys to death.
I didn't realize that there were that many Frankenstein films.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to say you didn't bore us, Karloff.
Oh,
and that's it. We're out.
Well, I can't. No, yeah, I can't do any better than that. I have to end on that.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely terrific. On that note, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight for this celebration of Frankenstein on Frankenstein Day, Mary Shelley's 225th birthday. It's been a lot of fun. I've loved all of these movies for a long time, so it's been really fun sharing my knowledge and cracking jokes and drinking some brews and having a good time. So thanks everybody so much for joining me. Also Sweet Feet, Benny, Evan, Fresh, as always. Thank you, boys. You can catch us tomorrow night here for our Scream Stream minisodes. We're watching another episode of The Veil starring Boris Karloff. Kind of great segue there, Fresh, because that's who we're watching tomorrow night. And you can catch us on Friday for The Bat starring Vincent Price, legend. Both of those you can catch at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so watch us there. You can find us on YouTube to catch past episodes. We're on Twitter at Scream Stream Show, on Instagram at Scream Stream Show. You can find Fresh at Fresh Rogan on Twitter, on Instagram. Evan's off the grid, so don't even.
You're not gonna find me.
You're not gonna find Evan. Anything else, boys, before we close out this Frankenstein Day Symposium?
I'm good to go.
Happy birthday, Mary Shelley.
Happy birthday, Mary Shelley. Happy Frankenstein Day, everybody. Go and watch some classic Frankenstein movies. If any of those trailers caught your fancy, go find it. The internet,
I know which one I'm about to watch,
internet,
bro.
Internet archive is full of ones that it shouldn't even have on there. So head on over to Internet Archive. You can find some. Hint, hint. It's all public domain there, so they say. And celebrate Frankenstein Day. I'm glad you could celebrate it with us. Until tomorrow, sweet screams, everybody.
And to all a good fright.
Creep tight. Don't let the vampires bite, everybody.
Ow, ow, ow.